welcome back to my channel. My name's Tina and it's time for another one of my makeup and murder mystery series. Today we're going to be talking about Belle Gunness. I apologize, I'm going to mess up names as usual. I'm going to be doing kind of a green look because she was a poisoner. These are my inspiration picks. For makeup, I'm going to be using the Thank Me Later primers. Eye and face. Foundation will be Tarte Shape Tape and my Wet n Wild. For concealer, I'll be using my Wet n Wild as well as my Under the Sea concealer. For the palettes, I'm primarily going to be using my Lorac Pirates of the Caribbean palette, as well as the Juvias Place Magic palette. Any palettes that I can find greens in that have a shimmer that I'm looking for. I will have all that information in the description. Belle was born in Norway on November 11th, 1859. She immigrated from Norway to the United States in 1881. She was about 6 foot tall and 200 pounds, so she was a very sizable woman. She marries Mads Albert Sorensen in 1884. They start their life, they buy a house, they start a candy store. Within a year, that candy store was failing and causing them to go bankrupt, and then luckily it burned to the ground, burned their house, and gave them enough money to start over with. Soon afterwards, her husband, Mad, dies from heart failure, except for the first doctor who saw him said he didn't think it was heart failure. He thought that he had died of arsenic poisoning, but his regular doctor said, no, I've been treating him for years for heart failure, definitely heart failure. His family was really upset about this and wanted an inquest. There is a bunch of court records and everything showing that they really pushed to have something done about this. Nothing really ever happened from it. The first doctor was pretty much ignored, the family, because the other doctor said no, it was heart failure. All their claims were pretty much just dismissed. According to records, it's hard to say how many children she actually had because records aren't the same. Then they were not anywhere near what they are now. Some claim that she had 2 children, others say she had 4. We know that she had 2 infants die between her and Mads, and both of them died from like colic, stomach problems. Looking back on it, they're the symptoms of poisoning, but at that time, children died. Children just didn't live as long back then. She collects insurance on all of these. For Mads alone, she collects about $8,000, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but back then that would be equivalent to $250,000 today. It was a lot of money. She then goes on and marries Peter Gunness April 1st, 1902, and within a week, Peter's infant daughter mysteriously dies. She had been home alone with Belle in the house, but again, nobody really says anything about it because babies died. Then Peter has kind of an odd accident in December of the same year. He's a butcher, been a butcher his entire life, you know, deals with knives and stuff. He's a pretty careful guy. Supposedly one night he's inside the house. He reaches up to grab something that's above the stove, trips, knocks a boiling pot of brine onto himself, which causes him to stumble backwards, and then a meat grinder falls and bashes him in the head and kills him. Again, people are looking at that going, wait a minute, something's not right here, but nobody can prove anything. So the autopsy results back up that he has this weird freak accident. And of course, once again, he's insured. His daughter was not. Now she moves to Laport, Indiana, and buys a 48-acre farm there where she raises pigs, cows, chickens, you know, the normal stuff that you do at that time. So once Peter dies, his other daughter, Swanhilde, I think is how you pronounce it, was taken away by his brother, and she is the only child known to survive living with Belle. Her and Peter's son is born May 1903. Around this time, Belle hires Ray Laport as a handyman, sort of a man about the house, gotta help out with the farm. He's not living there, he has his own house, but he's there a lot, and he sort of develops a crush on Belle. Apparently, she didn't develop a crush on him back, because in 1907, She starts advertising in large cities across the nation, in Norwegian papers that were in Seattle or San Francisco, Chicago, New York. She's putting these ads, and we have an actual ad. Comely widow who owns large farm in one of the finest districts in Laport County, Indiana, desires to make the acquaintance of a gentleman equally well provided, with view of joining fortune. No replies by letter considered, unless sender is willing to follow answer with a personal visit. Triflers need not apply. This wasn't super odd, although her ad apparently was. You know, she's well off and she's putting it in the paper, which is weird. She got a ton of people. This sounds great. I'm gonna take my Pirates of the Caribbean palette, and I'm gonna take Bones, and I'm gonna put that all over my lid. I'm gonna start building up with Menace, which is a very dark green on my outer corner and outer V. So what follows, of course, is she gets a ton of men. Her, like, a wealthy woman with a farm, all set up. She's a big, strong woman. She's not gonna die on them. She's Norwegian, so she speaks their language. So they, of course, come to see her. The first man who comes and sees her is George Anderson. He gets there, he brings money with him. He goes to the bank, he withdraws some. They talk about what they're gonna do. They're getting all set up. He spends the night at her house that night, wakes up to her standing over the top of him with a murderous look in her face, so much so that, according to myth, he ran to town barefoot in the middle of the night, looking over his shoulder the whole way, scared that she was coming after him and going to kill him. It is important to keep in mind that details like that tend to be added after the fact. We know that he did escape, we know that he did leave, but was it really the middle of the night or all that? Who knows? So he got out of there. He's the last man to escape. After that, she figured it out. More suitors are showing up, and they all follow the same sort of pattern. Ollie B. Budsberg, an elderly widow from Lola, Wisconsin, appeared next. He was last seen in Laport at the Savings and Loan Bank on April 6, 1907. He mortgaged his Wisconsin land for several $1,000s in cash. This whole thing repeats itself over and over. Men would show up, they would go to the bank, they would withdraw large sums of money, and then they would disappear. Occasionally, when they would be seen about, she rarely introduced them as her suitors. She would introduce them as cousins or just other weird things like that that didn't make a lot of sense. While all this is going on, Belle is being seen in her garden late at night digging in the hog's pen, but nobody thought anything of it. So I'm gonna take this deep blue and I'm just sort of blend around the outside edge of my eye with it, just to give this a little more depth. So now I'm gonna take some NYX glitter glue. I'm gonna take this deep green in here called Boza, creating a nice glittery green lid. So these men are all showing up around Belle and her property, but they're disappearing. And during this time, her foster daughter, stepdaughter, I'm not quite sure which, so she's like 15, 16. She goes missing and people start asking where she is. And Belle says, oh, I sent her college. Some people she told that. Other people, she said she's at finishing school, which is totally different. It was enough that people stopped asking questions. While all that's going on, her handyman falls in love with her and is mooning after her and wants to marry her. He's jealous of every suitor she has at the farm. So I'm going to take Moneybags, which is a deeper green because this is super bright, and then this deep green out of here, Twilight. This is a My Little Pony Colourpop palette, and start giving my lids some depth using a damp flat shader brush. In December of 1907, she starts talking to this guy, Andrew Helgling. He's a bachelor farmer from Aberdeen, South Dakota. And the pair are exchanging these letters, and we have a letter that I can read to you. To dearest friend in the world, no woman in the world is happier than I am. I know that you are now to come to me to be my own. I can tell from your letters you are the man I want. It does not take one long to tell when I like you better than anyone in the world I know. Think how we will enjoy each other's company. You, the sweetest man in the whole world. We will be alone with each other. Can you conceive of anything nicer? I think of you constantly when I hear your name mentioned, and this is when one of the dear children speaks of you, or I hear myself humming it with the words of an old love song. It is beautiful music in my ears. My heart beats in wild rapture for you, my Andrew. I love you. Come, prepare. Of course, Andrew Helging goes right to her. She's writing him these love letters, and I'm sure there were more. They've been writing back and forth, and this is the woman he's gonna marry, and they're gonna spend their life together. He goes and he has a check for $2,900, his entire savings. A few days after he arrives, he too goes to the Savings and Loans Bank in Laport and deposits the check and takes the cash. Then he vanishes off the face of the earth. Nobody sees him again. A couple days later, Bella comes in and deposits $500 in the Savings and Loan Bank, and then deposits another $700 in another bank in town. And this is when things really go downhill. She's been having problems with Ray Laport, and she fires him on February 3rd, 1908. Then Helging's Andrew's brother starts writing her saying, "Hey, where's my brother? I haven't heard from him in a while." And she writes back and said, "Oh, he went to Norway to visit relatives." And his brother's like, "No, my brother did not do that. My brother would never do that. Where is he?" Well, then she does another con, was what the plan was. She says to him, "He's gone missing. I'll help you find him. I'm worried too. But it costs a lot of money to hire people to find missing people, so you need to bring all your money with you." A couple days go by, and I think she's thinking about this and realizes this was a bad idea. And now she has a trail, and she has this guy looking for a guy that was seen in her house just, recently. And she has money she probably wasn't supposed to have. Obviously, she got thinking about it, was like, ooh, I made a mistake. How do serial killers deal with stuff when they make mistakes like that? First, she goes and she tries to have Ray Laport declared insane with the court there. That doesn't work out. They say, no, he's perfectly fine. Well, she doesn't like that response. Then she tries to have him arrested and basically accuses him of stalking her. At that time, they didn't really give a shit. I didn't do anything about that either. So now I'm gonna take that really light green out of here, Snuzzle, and put that in my inner corner. She goes to her attorney and she tells him this big sob story because none of these things are working. She's tried everything to get Roy arrested. It ain't working out. So then in April of 1908, she goes to her attorney and she tells her attorney she's in fear for her life. She doesn't think she's gonna live much longer. She wants to make out a will. She settles all her estate. She pays off her mortgage, withdraws most of her money for the bank, prepares this whole thing because she's gonna die. Poor Belle, she's not long to live. I'm gonna take my Super Cat eyeliner and line my eyes and my double-decker lashes from Butter London and do that. I didn't contour, silly me. So I'll be using my Wet n Wild stick for that. I didn't conceal because I was worried that this was gonna create a mess, and it did. So I'm just gonna clean that up. The very next night, her farm burns to the ground. 4 bodies are found inside, 3 children, and a woman who's headless. They're confused because this woman doesn't resemble Belle, even burnt. She's much smaller than Belle would have been. They estimated that she'd only been about 5-6 feet tall. Belle was like 6 feet tall. That's 6 inches different. She also was quite a bit thinner than Belle. The police look at this and they promptly arrest Ray Laport because Belle had set him up good and proper. I'm gonna take Life out of here, which is this deep blue, and just bring that around outer corner lower lash line. I'm gonna use some greens and light green from the My Little Pony palette and do my under eye. They have Ray in jail. He's looking really guilty for the fire. There was witnesses against him, including a kid who said he actually saw Ray running away from the fire that night. They're getting ready to hold a trial. Where's Belle? The dentist says, hey, if you find her teeth, I can identify her because she had quite a bit of dental work done. Well, what do you know? Some teeth show up in the fire. They match the work Belle had done. There was porcelain teeth and gold teeth. The thing is, according to jewelers and other people, this doesn't make any sense. And they actually did experiments, and this stuff should not have survived the fire. They're trying to have a trial for Ray. His attorney's saying, look, obviously, he didn't murder her because that's not her body. They actually have a trial just to decide if it was her body. They said that the reason her body looked like that was it shrank up like a roast. That doesn't happen. While they're doing this investigation, Andrew's brother shows up. The Hellgreen brother shows up. And he's, wants to know where his brother is, and they just had this fire and everybody's, looking all over the place. The new handyman says, hey, there's a part of the hog pen that I wasn't ever allowed in. It had this kind of depression in it. The sheriff's officer, they go back to the farm, they start digging, and they start pulling out these bodies. They find 2 small bodies of infant children that nobody even knew she had. They assumed that she had them and killed them. They found the body of Andrew Hellgren. It sort of sounds like maybe his brother actually found his body, but I'm not positive about that. They found the body of Ole B. Budsberg from Lola, Wisconsin, who vanished in May of 1907. They found the body of Thomas Lindboe, who had left Chicago and gone to work as a hired man for Gunness 3 years earlier. They found Henry Gullhard of Scandinavia, Wisconsin, who'd gone to wed her a year earlier, taking $1,500 with him. They also found some belongings with him of 2 other men, Olaf Sleverherd from Chicago and John Moe of Elbow Lake, Minnesota. And then they found Olaf Lindblom, age 36, from Wisconsin. And at this point, the railroad is actually taking people out there. They have a special admission rate for the morbidly curious sightseers. And they were taking about 1,500 or 15,000 people out there. That seems like crazy amount. There's pictures of it, to stand around and watch them remove these bodies, a whole bunch of which are never find enough of them because she was feeding them to the pigs. To fully identify, there will be a list linked below of the people who they think she may have killed. She may have killed up to 40 people. They know for sure she killed 14. So this is the CoverGirl True Blend in D. A year later, Ray Lampier is dying, and on his deathbed, he makes a confession. He burned down the house at the request of Belle so that they could run away together, and that was their plan. He knows that she wasn't in the house at the time. That was a housekeeper that she had just hired a few days beforehand. And Ray admitted that he had helped bury the bodies and said that normally, so she would poison her victims with strychnine in their coffee. The other way she would kill them was she would go to bed with them in the middle of the night while they were sleeping. She would suffocate them using some chloroform and then bash them in the head and kill them, which fits with the account of the one man who did escape. And there's a whole ton of variations of this story. I use stuff from police reports and insurance report. I'm going to use my Ofra highlight. I'm just using the lightest shade. In my opinion, this woman is a flat out sociopath. There was apparently a documentary from 2008 where they said that she had a miscarriage in like 1877 or something, and that her personality changed after that completely and radically. And I think that that's bullshit. There's nothing to back that up. They said that she was attacked, basically blaming it on hormones again. I don't think so. This is the Pirates of the Caribbean in Barbosa. It's a double-ended one. Yes, things can cause people to change personalities drastically, and a trauma like that could certainly have affected her, but it's unlikely that it would cause her to suddenly start killing her children. Maybe men. She may have hated men enough that she'd just kill them, but children, and she killed quite a few children. I think this all started with the arsons. Maybe that wasn't her idea. Maybe it was. Maybe it was her and her husband's idea to get out from under the debt that they had. However that came about, I think that's what started this whole thing off, was the insurance money and her discovering an easy way to make money and make her life easier. I also think she killed her children and other people's children because they bothered her. And she just didn't want to bother with them. You know, they're an inconvenience to her and an inconvenience to her life, and she didn't sign up for that, didn't want that, especially if they weren't her children, so she killed them. One of the other bodies found out there was the daughter, Jenny. She didn't go to college. She was buried in the hog pen. I don't know why that one wasn't listed. I don't think that this was a case of her suddenly becoming evil because something happened to her. There is no proof that she was abused or anything. Life at that time was hard for pretty much anybody. I mean, immigrants especially. I'm just not buying that. I think that she was just evil. She's one of those few people that we refer to as a psychopath or sociopath. There's a couple different words you can use for it. They all boil down to the same thing. They don't really feel feelings the way we do. They don't care for other human beings, even their own children. It's all about what meets their needs, and having a nice farm and, you know, this nice life and being able to afford a handyman and having all these suitors probably gave her a rush. All those things just add up to me. You know, she's just evil. She was only in her late 40s, early 50s when this all went down. Did she go on and keep killing? Probably. The good thing is she probably wasn't able to have more children. So that was my Pacifica Rainbow drops. I love these. And I'm gonna highlight my brow bone real quick. That's pretty much the entire thing from the records that I could find. There is a ton of third-hand information out there. You can't back up like with true horror stories about her and things she supposedly did that people didn't turn in until after the fact. And those are interesting and fascinating, and I could do an entire video just on those, but I like to stick to that I can verify through reports, police reports, and things like that, firsthand information. And there is a ton of that on her because she was investigated so many times. And that is sad and unusual too. Most serial killers don't really get investigated by the cops all that much, especially female serial killers. They're pretty good at avoiding law enforcement and suspicion. But she wasn't. She actually wasn't very good at it originally because they investigated her right away. I do think she killed all of them. I don't think it was, you know, a few of them. I think it was all of them. I think she killed her first husband. I think she's a bad person. So that's it for my look and the murder mystery. Let me know what you think and if you've heard about this case and what you think of it. If you live in the area and have visited this place, I'd love to hear about it because I hear the museum is fantastic. So I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share, and ring that bell. Bye!